Welcome to CookBook, brought to you by the Sundress Academy for the Arts. I'm Darren C. Demaree, host for today, and while all of the rest of Sundress is down at the Poetry Retreat in Knoxville, Tennessee, I'm here in Columbus, Ohio for the first CookBook guest, which will be Ruth Awad, who's an incredibly talented poet. She was a finalist for a Ruth Lilly Fellowship. She's got poems published everywhere. She's one of these incredibly talented people that when her first book comes out, everybody's going to take notice. I'm really excited that she's going to be here today and that we get to make vegan chocolate chip cookies. I've never made vegan chocolate chip cookies before. I really am much more of a break apart the cookies and put them on the sheet sort of thing. That's how I cheat through things. But she's going to teach me how to make them. We'll get to make a whole batch of them, eat some of them, and have a nice long conversation with Ruth. So very excited about today. Welcome to the first cookbook. Today we're going to learn how to make vegan chocolate chip cookies with our guest Ruth Awad, who is going to teach me these ins and outs of something I have never made before. So what are the tricks?
With vegan baking, it's essential that you measure everything according to the recipe because it's an exact science. And if you use too much flour, you will make biscuits instead of cookies. So.
Well, as long as there's chocolate chips in it, I'm sure it'll be fine. What do I do first?
Alright, let's start with putting the flour in the mixing bowl.
Okay, now we have done the exact measuring beforehand. If in any of this process you have questions about how much we put in and so forth, we're going to have the recipe up on the website so you can just check that there. So let's get the flour in, and then what?
Well, we're going to mix all of the dry ingredients together first. So let's add in the ½ teaspoon of salt.
Okay. Why is that so important with vegan cooking?
Because you have to get the consistencies right. So if you use too little baking powder or too much or forget it altogether, which I've done before.
And thus the biscuits instead of
biscuits.
cookies. Okay.
Or pancakes if you forget
sure.
baking powder.
Okay, and then what?
And then we'll add in the baking powder.
Baking powder.
And then the cinnamon to taste. So.
And she was telling me this is all by feel, so I get to
you have to
get
call
creative.
In the cinnamon spirit.
Would you prefer I put your initials in cinnamon?
Oh, please do. Okay. Good luck. Yeah.
That's not bad.
It's pretty close.
That's not bad. Actual amount-wise, though, is that right? Should there be more? Should it look like dusting?
I like cinnamon.
You like cinnamon.
So I'd be a little bit more heavy-handed. Perfect.
All right, what's next?
Alright, we're going to mix that together.
Okay.
And then we'll add in the chocolate chips, which we are also going to eyeball, depending on mood and spirit.
So all of the fails when people try to make something like this, it's all about the consistency. It's what has gone horribly wrong besides that. How else can you screw this up?
This particular recipe?
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult. I picked this recipe because it's very easy.
I appreciate the first time we're doing this that she went fail-proof on it.
But some recipes, they call for egg substitutes like a flax egg, which is also kind of hard to mess up. But,
okay.
Some people just try to skip those more complicated ingredients, and it really affects the...
So if this is a beginner's vegan recipe, like what's the end of the line? Like what's the hardest one to make that you've made?
As far as baking goes?
Sure.
Cakes are a little bit more complicated, just because icing is you have to get the consistency right too.
How do you make vegan icing?
You really just use soy milk instead of milk.
Okay.
And vegan margarine instead of butter.
All right. So they've thought of everything.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do next?
Next we're going to add in the chocolate chips.
Okay. And how much of a faux pas if I put the whole bag in?
I mean, it'll be all chocolate chips.
It'll be all chocolate. Okay, well, we'll go half the bag here. All right. Stir again?
Yep.
All right. So when was the first time you made these?
I found this recipe about 9 years ago when I first went vegan.
Was there an old gypsy woman involved?
No, I wish so.
Would have been a good story.
No, I was just starving for something sweet, you know.
Sure. And how long after you went vegan did you find this recipe?
I'd say about 4 months, maybe.
Okay.
It took me a while.
Did you go that long without cookies?
I think that I found a couple store-bought options.
Nice.
I cannot go that long without sugar. I'm a sugar junkie.
And very few of the stores are open 24 hours a day when you're finishing your master's thesis.
Exactly.
So you gotta make your own sometimes. All right, what do I do next?
All right, next we're going to mix the oil, water, vanilla, and sugar together. We can just put it in this one.
Okay. Just put everything in there?
Yep.
Okay. And I grabbed everything but the sugar. Right here.
And we just need a cup of that.
Okay. How much vanilla?
I think a teaspoon.
We have very special vanilla that we keep in the cabinet, but I was told by my wife that we're not allowed to use that. It's too special. I don't know what she's saving for. Hopefully something delicious. Okay. Alright. And then you said a cup of sugar.
Yep.
Now why do you mix the sugar in with this instead of that?
You know, I don't know.
Okay. We will again go to the old gypsy woman. Let's make that a theory. Okay, you said a whole cup.
We can edit that out, right?
It was bound to happen at some point. All right. There we go. Not quite. A little bit more. I'm glad that none of you can see all the sugar that is now on the counter. All right. Yeah? No? All right. Okay, put that in here.
Yep. And then we're going to mix that all together, and then we'll add it to our other mix.
Oh, mix this first.
Yes.
Okay.
You're supposed to just know what's in my head. Come on.
I'm doing my best. Doing my best. So how often do you make these?
Like maybe once every couple months.
Okay.
Depends on how much trouble I'm in with certain people.
So the list of people you bribed with these is quite long.
It's very long.
Excellent.
Yes.
So if Ruth ever brings you these cookies, you know that she wants something. Or she's already done something and she's bailing herself out of trouble. Okay. So everything mixed together.
Mm-hmm.
And then we add it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And then just mix, mix, mix?
Yep.
Should I use a whisk or is the spoon okay?
The spoon is
Spoon
good.
is alright.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The best part about this so far is we've only had to use really one tool for the majority of it.
I told you it was an easy recipe.
It's fantastic. Alright. So what sort of consistency am I looking for?
It will be cookie dough consistency.
Alright. So if these cookies don't work on someone, what's the backup option? How else do you bribe them? Is there like is there a coffee cake? Well, the smile and the laugh is nice. I get that, but what's the backup baked goods if the cookies don't work?
I have been known to make red velvet cupcakes, which are phenomenal.
That's got to be the closer, doesn't it?
It
Red
has
velvet
to be.
cupcakes?
Yeah.
That is, well, what I'm going to need is my mother-in-law, her favorite dessert in the world is red velvet cupcakes. So if I ever get in really big trouble again, I'm going to call you in.
All right.
All right. How does that look?
Looks good.
See? So this is what we're going for. Looks exactly like cookie dough, so I feel like we're doing it right.
Yep.
Okay, so once we got it all mixed together, obviously we turn them into cookies, cookie shapes, we get them on the sheet. What's the oven? What should the oven be at?
I think it's 375.
375. All right. We will get that going, and we will get the cookies on the sheet, and we'll give them a chance to bake, and we'll make some coffee and so forth, and then we'll get to sit down and enjoy Ruth's vegan chocolate chip cookies. So I can't wait. Thanks. For 10 to 12 minutes in the oven at 350. 350. We now have these gorgeous vegan chocolate chip cookies. So we can enjoy these, and we can chat with Miss Ruth here for a little while about anything and everything poetry. When I did my little intro before you got here, it was very complimentary. And one of the things I said was that you have these great poems that are sort of everywhere in all of these favorite magazines of mine. And some of what I consider to be some of the better literary magazines. And that when your first book gets picked up, it's going to be this magical thing that sort of catches everybody's eye. How is the book?
The book is coming along. I'm shopping it around to a couple different presses right now.
Okay.
I'm doing the book contest route and
Excellent.
trying to catch open reading periods when I can.
Sure.
But it's good. I feel like it's in a form that I am happy with. I'd be proud to have it out.
What's it called?
It is called As If Their Bodies Were Wishes.
Okay. And how many of these poems are about the war in Lebanon and everything like that, or?
About a third of the book is what I call the war poem section.
Sure.
The book actually follows my dad through his experiences growing up in Lebanon during the war and then his subsequent immigration to the United States.
Okay.
So the first section covers most of his experiences during the war and then some of the major events that happened. And then it follows him in the second section to when he comes to America, and he was a student just trying to scrape by.
Mm-hmm.
And he met my mom when he was in Carbondale, Illinois.
Okay.
And it follows their relationship and how he could never really escape the war, and he felt guilty for leaving Lebanon and leaving his family, and the implication in the poems is that it's one of the factors that ended up driving my parents apart.
Yeah.
And then the third section of the book kind of follows that resolution, the aftermath of my parents' divorce. My dad got custody of me and my two sisters, and then it finishes with my dad returning to Lebanon when he finds out his dad is dying.
When did you go back to Lebanon?
Well, he's been back since then. He actually just went to Lebanon a couple months ago, well, a month ago. And but that last poem is when he went in 2012 to see his father.
Okay. And how many of these poems were from the master's thesis that?
I don't know, I'd say at least half. Probably more than half. I've revised them heavily since then.
Okay.
So.
What's your revision process like? I'm much more of a write a poem in a rush and change a few things while I'm doing it, and then sort of I'm done.
I like to call myself a lazy poet because
You spend a little time. That's not lazy. That's extra work.
I mean, when I actually sit down to write a poem, I've actually been thinking about it for months, sometimes years.
Okay.
So I do a lot of the initial writing in my head. So when I actually sit down to write a poem, it's pretty close to the vision I have.
The
of it.
idea is there.
Yep.
Right.
So a lot of my revisions for the manuscript it's been mostly tweaking so that it's more tonally consistent.
Reordering, things
Yep.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, mine is always much more, I sit down every single day and write something.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've taken 5 days off in the last 6 years, I think it was. My wife made the request on our 5th anniversary trip that you not write during this time.
Wow.
And so I yielded in honor of her. But other than that, it's much more of a sort of put my head down and do it every single day.
Yeah.
And brief edits, and when I come back to put together a manuscript, because I'll do those like long sequences that are 100, 200, 300 poems, and then try to tie them together. So that's when most of my editing comes in. But other than that, it's very sort of fast and torrid kind of thing. But it's the bigger ideas, like you've got these big ideas for a single poem. I'll have these big abstract ideas that I try to figure out in the process of actually writing them.
Right.
And I'm not sure how much actually gets figured out until I do sit down to edit. But there's a whole mass of things for me to figure out at the end. That's where mine takes the longest.
Yeah. I envy that work ethic. I've tried that route before, but it is just not for me. I'm not a sit in a chair and just force myself to write kind of person. At the same time, I realize that waiting for the muse to come down is like, you're never going to get any work done that way.
Right.
So I do a lot of research. Research informs a lot of my writing. And yeah, I just let an idea fester until I feel like I can write about it intelligibly enough. So
I wrote a collection of boxing poems, Temporary Champions, and that had a lot of research because I didn't know anything about boxing. Like, I played baseball growing up, I didn't know anything about boxing. I had to learn the lingo, I had to learn the history of it. So that took a lot of research. But I did all the research leading up to it and then was able to sort of sit down and do it the way I would normally do. And I did the same thing with a bunch of poems I wrote about. They blew up, do you know they blew up the Thinker up in Cleveland?
no.
Like this group called the Weathermen. They were these radicals in the late 60s, early 70s. They set 3 sticks of dynamite in between the Thinker, and this was one of the original casts. So Rodin did 20 original Thinkers, and one of them ended up in Cleveland, outside the art museum, and they blew it up. And it got knocked off the pedestal and blew up the doors, and it was at night and nobody got hurt. Also, they put a message on it that blew up, so they had no idea what they were trying to say. But I went up there, and the museum was very nice to me, and I got to do some research up there and figure out, and I wrote a bunch of poems in the voice of the blown-up Thinker, because they didn't fix it, because Rodin was long gone at that point, and they were like, well, we can sort of get a new one, but then it's not really, we can fix the old one, but it'll look different. So they just put it back up, legs blown off and all, so when you see it, the legs are all distorted and gone, and so I wrote a bunch of poems about that, just because it's just sort of weird and weird and wild, and in the voice of this great piece of art that was destroyed in Cleveland of all places, and
no message.
The reason, they could tell that they had tried to write something, but it was gone. So I don't know.
Man, you got to plan your vandalism better.
A little bit better, right? 1 stick less dynamite if you really want to get the point across. But who knows?
Yeah.
So when you were researching, how much did you talk to your dad about what, or was he willing to talk about that at all?
Yeah, it was actually my first time really talking to my dad about his experiences during the war. My dad is a very private man. He doesn't like to talk about himself that much, and I think that was a very painful chapter in his life.
When it sounds like the pain sort of didn't end with the war, it sort of, he carried it with him for a long time.
And a lot of that was guilt for leaving his family. Like, they were very steadfast in that they thought it was going to end quickly, and they just didn't want to leave their home.
Yeah.
But I think that my dad, he always felt guilty for following through with what he wanted to do and what he thought was best.
What got him to leave? I mean, what was the impetus of the actual leaving?
It was either join the army or one of these militias, or get out of there.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm glad that
well,
he got out. He went to school in England, and that's where he learned English. He actually told me that he learned English by listening to Beatles songs. So
excellent.
The Beatles have like a warm place in our family history.
I would think so.
And then he came over to the United States to go to grad school, and he studied mechanical engineering.
Okay.
And that's when he met my mom.
In Carbondale, and then you went back. Were you from there, and then you went to OSU,
No.
and then?
My parents lived in Carbondale for a while. My mom was from a small town outside of Carbondale called DuQuoin, Illinois.
Okay.
And so they stayed there while my dad finished up school, and my older sister was born while they lived in Carbondale, and then my dad got a job in Virginia, and that's where I was born, and then he got a job in Wausau, Wisconsin, and that's where my youngest sister was born.
Okay.
And then we moved to, this is crazy, we moved to Tennessee, and then my parents divorced, and we moved with my dad to Indiana.
Okay.
And then from Indiana to Ohio.
So is Columbus the place you've been the longest then? At this point?
Yeah, I think at this point.
Okay.
So we moved around a lot, but we lived in Mansfield, Ohio.
Sure.
While I was in high school. And then I moved to Columbus, Ohio.
You were actually in jail. At the facility? No.
Yes, at the reformatory.
Sure.
I moved to Columbus to go to OSU.
Okay. See, I grew up in Mount Vernon, and so whenever anyone was going to Mansfield, you were either going to the mall or you were visiting someone in jail. So.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. You were at the mall. You weren't at the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
Actually,
fine.
my dad has a nice house out there. I
Nice.
actually like visiting it.
Sure.
And Mansfield has its.
It's
kind
not
of,
that large of an actual town,
Yeah.
and all of the surrounding area is really pretty. And,
Yeah, but like the actual downtown Mansfield, it has this really creepy carousel that I'm totally smitten with. So it has like this weird rundown charm to it.
Does it still work?
Yeah, it still works. I just went there back
And
in
rode
December.
the creepy carousel.
I did. I love carousels. I don't know why.
Okay. The one at the zoo goes too fast for my kids. It like freaks them out. You gotta like stand right next to them.
I've actually never been to that one.
Okay. It started out, actually you were talking about maybe moving to Clintonville.
Mm-hmm.
It started out up here where the Whetstone Park used to be, because it used to be like they'd have a pool and they had like a circus and they had all of these things. Like WOSU did all of those different programs about their neighborhoods in Columbus, and the one about Clintonville talked about this great circus that was there. There was an elephant, there was this carousel, and they took the carousel that was at Whetstone and put it at the zoo.
Huh.
So it's been around for like 120 years or something like that. They just painted up and added the new gears.
Yeah.
Less creepy. Don't want to frighten the animals, I assume. Much faster. But it's really cool that it's been around that long. So at the zoo carousel.
Check it out.
That's right. So besides the book, what else are you working on right now? Are you trying to write new stuff or just trying to tie that together?
You know, I've actually put a pin in that manuscript and I'm working on my second one. And this one, I feel like it's only fair I focus so much on my dad for the first one that it's my mom's turn.
Excellent.
My mom is a very eccentric, wonderful woman. She's an artist, she's a tattoo artist, and she's also a registered nurse.
Okay.
And, I don't know, she's kind of a Renaissance woman.
There's something comforting about getting your tattoo from a registered nurse.
Right? Yeah.
Every tattoo I've gotten has been by a guy who's definitely not a registered nurse, so I would find comfort in that. That'd be nice.
She knows a lot about cross-contamination and
Right.
how not to do it, so...
Okay, so the poems about her are going to be completely different in tone, I would imagine.
Yeah, these poems, the poems that focused on my dad tended to be a little bit more narrative, and I'm trying to break away from that and write more lyrically, which is fun. I feel like it's kind of opened up some kind of freedom that I didn't feel like I necessarily had when I was writing about the war. I really wanted to get the details right with those war poems, and I wanted them to be an accurate representation not only of what historically happened, but also true to my father's experiences. So in that way, it helped drive the project along. I had pretty exact parameters to work within.
But that's a little burdensome. I mean, it's tougher to do that.
Yep. So with this collection, I don't really have a set path that I want it to follow exactly. I just want it to be more... I want it to capture the spirit of kind of my mother's personality and her...
Okay.
Just her demeanor. She's a very interesting voice to write in. I like writing from her perspective.
Okay. I think I wrote, in my first book, there was one poem that was about my dad a little bit. And it was sort of a small poem, and he didn't have anything to say about it. What he always had to say about was, I wrote a poem called Knox County Fair that's in that book, which is actually the title is very the one I gave you is very similar to the title of yours. It's As We Refer to Our Bodies. And there's a poem in there called Knox County Fair that starts, she asked me to put her in a headlock. It's about a woman trying to imagine a world outside of Knox County. But there's sex in the poem. And so my dad many times over has tried to explain to people that I was not actually having sex at the Knox County Fair with anyone that was not really inspired. He would really like that out there, and I refuse to give him that. But it was about the idea of trying to get away from home and so on and so forth, trying to imagine something outside of Knox County. And that's the only one that he talks about. So
just for the disclaimer.
Just because, Darren, people really think that that happened.
This is kind of related to that, but my thesis director, Judy Jordan, was just talking about how her most recent manuscript, she's having a hard time placing it because a couple readers that she's gotten feedback from have said that, oh, these can't be true to your experiences. You're a tenured professor. You're writing about being broke and starving and living in a greenhouse. And that really happened to her. And
right.
It was obviously before she became a tenured professor and all this
Sure.
stuff, and she won a big book award. But I think that's interesting how people read so much nonfiction into poetry.
Right.
And I guess we don't really do ourselves any favors. I don't do myself any favors because I'm like, this is about my dad. This really
right.
happened to me.
Well, I like to jump around. So like I've got a couple finished things that haven't been placed, and one of them is this collection of prose poems called Unfinished Murder Ballads. Well, obviously I've never killed anybody or tried to kill anybody, but I like the idea of that old style of the murder ballad, like the revenge plot. So it's a bunch of prose poems with these violent acts almost happening. And obviously if someone were to read that, they'd be like, well, that's pretty fucked up. Because it's a bunch of people almost dying and coming close to dying and people just being terrible to each other.
Yeah.
But I had just gotten done writing these Wednesday morning poems that were all about hope and drinking milkshakes in the morning and getting them on your beard and like these sort of uplifting things. And I did that for a few months and then was like, it'd be interesting if I wrote a bunch of poems where people were almost dying. And just sort of being flighty with it and trying to find different challenges. And I don't have any background in boxing. Well, let's try to write some poems about boxing. Or I don't have any, real interest in art history or any training in that. But the fact that someone tried to blow up the Thinker in Ohio, of all places, was incredibly interesting. These murder ballads that have this, 500-year-long tradition of people writing these poems and songs where people essentially try to get back at someone for something that happened, mostly family and romantic slights, is incredibly interesting to me. But it's got actually, nothing to do with me. But people can't sort of help themselves when they see the title and they see the author and they see, anything that's got a first-person voice to it is the author's voice, and at least 50% of the time it's just not the case.
Yeah. I struggle with that too. Well, I write a lot about my personal experiences, but for some persona poems that I was trying on in my first manuscript, it was complicated. I was trying to write one poem in particular from the point of view of this notoriously, cruel militia, and they were called the Guardians of the Cedars, and they tortured people. They had this awful thing that they were known for, and it was tying people to the back of taxi cabs and then driving them down the freeway, and it was kind of like their calling card. It was just brutal. And so I tried to write a poem from that point of view, trying to understand how people who have that kind of reputation can draw people to their side and draw them to their cause. So
because the easy thing is just to damn them and move on.
Exactly. So I was trying to understand, how do you get people to empathize with this point of view?
Right.
At the same time, I have never sent out that poem because I don't want people to think that that I endorse that point of view. So that's the complicated
But you're not trying to tell 85% of the story, you're trying to tell the whole story, and there were some incredibly terrible people doing horrific things, and you can't sort of leave that out.
I know, and I feel like it would be disingenuous to the whole story to leave that out. At the same time, it's so brutal, and they were so awful. It concerns me being associated with that.
Yeah. One of the things that I had difficulty with in the boxing book is that that's a fight. It was the Mancini-Kim title fight. And it was on TV and it was recorded and you can watch it on YouTube. But to watch the fight over and over and over again and watch this man get killed in the ring, it was incredibly and I was trying to figure out why it happened and how it happened and sort of what motivations were behind it. And at a certain point, I had to stop. I had to quit watching the fight because, I'm seeing, Sinatra and Bill Cosby and all these people in the crowd dressed to the nines and people smoking and drinking and women in beautiful dresses, watching a man get put to death essentially because he was poor and he had to become a boxer and his mom was forcing him to do all these things. And Ray Mancini's dad was a boxer who never got to be a champion and forced him to become a boxer. And he got to this height, where in a new arena in Reno on national television, and he killed a man. And all of that stuff that sort of went into it is I read medical reports. I read, there were 4 ounces of blood on his brain, all this incredibly stuff. You just I couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped writing about a month before I planned on stopping because I was just sort of out. And I wrote one more poem that's in the book called Because I Tried to Like It Very Much, sort of trying to convince myself that this was something that was actual sport. It wasn't just some sort of public execution or some sort of display of manliness to make people, cheer and smoke cigars. And it's terrible things to think of. When you're thinking about war and revolution and the things that people do, even if it's terrible stuff, and thousands of people are dying, tens of thousands sometimes, people have justifications for that. When someone dies in sport, it's just sort of like, well, why the fuck did that need to happen?
It's just bloodlust.
Yeah, so trying to find some sort of balance in poetry with that, it was difficult for me to do and not feel like I was sort of, at a certain point, had to pull myself back. So that's a difficult thing to go through that you were trying to do. So I understand the inclination to not, look, I wrote this poem and it's going to help keep my book together, but I don't need to have my name on top of that in a lit mag now.
Yeah, and things are so volatile in the Middle East right now.
Yeah. Maybe you don't want to name those groups right now.
I don't think the Guardians of the Cedars are still around, but
okay.
Thankfully they're not.
You would hope at this point, if that's what they were doing, dragging people.
I would hope so, but you're always going to have a group like that, especially when it comes to a multi-factioned war, where it's essentially a civil war, the country's divided, and people will hold on to just this one kernel that differentiates them from someone who's almost exactly like them. And
then the people that win the war have so much hatred towards them for winning, and then the other group, and so on, and it just...
It's constant tension.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so did the love of tattoos come from your mom then? Is that what?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. My mom, after my parents divorced, my mom got this huge tattoo of roses and a huge rose vine up her belly, and I remember seeing it for the first time when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, "You're going to hell."
That was the first reaction?
It was, because we were taught that tattoos are bad.
You went to the Bible immediately. You were like, "Huh?"
Well, tattoos are kind of frowned on in Islam, and also from my mom's wacky brand of Christianity that she comes from.
Where tattoos mean sex, essentially.
Well, tattoos, it says in the Bible that you're not supposed to mar the body, so I guess it falls under that scope. I think that those attitudes are loosening up, though.
Yeah.
Almost everyone has tattoos anymore. But anyway, so I saw my mom's huge tattoo, and I was just like, "You're going to hell," and then she's like, "That's not true." And I was like, "I'm gonna get a tattoo." So from a very young age, my attitudes toward tattoos flipped very quickly, because they're beautiful.
And do you do some of your own tattooing as well?
I do.
Okay.
My mom briefly opened up a tattoo shop in Nashville, and we technically worked it together for a very brief time. But yeah, I kind of freelance tattoo.
From time to time?
Yeah, I don't have much time for it now, but I try to.
All right.
I tattooed my fiance recently.
There you go. He was awake, he knew what was going on.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Consent is very important to me.
Well, it gets complicated when your tattoo artist is sleeping next to you. You never quite know when the work is done.
Yeah. You're not supposed to tattoo someone if their eyes are not open.
That's a good rule. I'm sure that's a law somewhere.
Yeah. You could get the pantsuit off of you.
I would assume.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Well, before we got the cookies out, we were talking about Columbus poets and me sort of being really excited about some of the the people we've got working in Columbus, and we've got this younger crowd of poets right now in Columbus that a few folks don't know about is really incredible, and Ruth is part of that, and Maggie Smith and Hannah Stevenson, and a large collection, just sort of people I'm really excited to read sort of what they come up with. And I tend to find just in those magazines that I'm jealous and trying to get in and things like that. And then I know that Hannah's working on a new book, and Maggie just had her book come out from Tupelo.
Beautiful book.
Yeah, I've seen. And we've got Ariana Kotsanis, and just a whole lot of people who are all sort of right at 40 and younger, and so I'm really excited. Is there someone else that I don't know about that you're really excited about as well? I don't know. I don't get out that often.
Claudia Cortez is from Ohio-ish.
Right. She was just here Thursday night for a reading.
Yep.
How was that?
It was excellent. I love her chapbook. She gave me a copy of it. It's called Blood Metals, and it is
Good title.
a fantastic read. So.
Excellent. On Thursday nights, Hannah Stevenson does Paging Columbus readings here in Columbus that are pretty fantastic and always a lot of fun. Ruth and I, this is how I met Ruth. I was reading silly poems about different versions of Emily, and she was reading very serious poems about war. And the jokes I made leading up to that really didn't fit in with what she was reading, but it worked. It was sort of nice. Yeah. And we had a mystery writer, Yvonne. I don't remember her last name, but she read a story from her one mystery, and then I read silly things. Some of them a little serious, but mostly, talking about how Emily likes the fact that there are a lot of poems about her.
Yeah, how did she feel about that? I know you talked a little bit about that.
Right. I think she sort of didn't pay attention to it. I think when we were dating and things like that, it was like very sweet and so on and so forth. And then I found sort of the animal that is all these Emily As poems, and she sort of, life takes over, and she knows they're being written, and she'll see them published different places, and she kind of likes it. And then what happened is I started doing more readings, and Emily As poems would be part of the readings. They were in the first book. They're going to be in the fourth one that's coming out in October. And she gets excited when people ask her about them. Like, what do you think about these poems? And she sort of smiles and she talks about it for a little bit. And so one of the poems I read at the reading was about how she's sort of taking credit for these parts of her that aren't real now, when she's a little extra sexy or a little extra mean or a little extra of these qualities that she has, small parts of her personality that I make much bigger in a poem. She'll own that. So she likes it when she's a little bit saucier and a little bit meaner, a little bit sexier. So she's sort of taking that and gets excited about it when people ask her. But other than that, I think she sort of doesn't pay that much attention to it. I'm in the basement working. She hears the music, she knows I'm all right. Yeah. But that's about it. So what else in Columbus or Ohio or arts in general are you excited about?
In Ohio, well, there's such a good art scene here. I moved back to Columbus a year ago from Carbondale, and I really haven't submersed myself in the scene yet. I was really involved when I was...
You're busy. You've got animals and a fiance and books you're finishing. I understand.
Yep. So I feel like I'm still getting back into it. This is obviously a part of that. But when I was in Columbus for undergrad, I was very involved with the creative writing program. I always went to the in-house readings that they had there for the MFA students, and then the faculty would also have readings. So I really just kind of keep a lookout for any poetry readings and try to hit them up, and that's my way of staying tethered to the poetry world, even though I sling insurance copy all day.
It's alright, during the day I take care of two kids that just sort of run around, one of them naked a lot of the time. And so, when you get a chance to do some poetry, alright. And then my night job is essentially teaching essay writing, so when a page in Columbus comes up, or the poetry forum down at Boston Girls or anything like that, it's always fun. Yep. Maggie read at the fundraiser for the poetry forum, and she did a great job there. Alright. Do you have a title yet for the next book?
No.
No? Those are still Was the other one going to change?
Probably. It was
Is it because I said it sounds like my first book? Is that what it is?
No.
Did that throw you off?
So many books have bodies in the title, like, it would really limit me.
Right.
The working title was initially Coat of Arms, which I
Okay.
really liked. But I thought that it needed...
Familial, right?
It needed something a little bit more airy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I might go back to it. I really liked Coat of Arms, but no one else seemed to like it.
Who said no?
My thesis committee was like, you can do
Sister.
better.
Oh.
And I was like, can I though? Can I?
I feel like this is right on.
Maybe it was a little too on the nose, which I can see that argument.
Okay.
I like on the nose.
It works,
Right.
right? Not everything has to be a metaphor.
For as much as I love writing poems, coming up with a title, it is just beyond me.
You're talking to someone who does
I'll
these...
look out the window and be like, please, inspiration, come to me.
who does these long sequences that all have the same title, just with number changes. So that'll,
That's the way to go.
if I come up with a good sequence, that's 3 months of not having to come up with a new title for anything.
That's genius.
And I've just got, that's 150 poems of, man, I don't have to think of another title. Because in grad school, that was one of my things where they'd be like, this is a great poem. This title sucks. So I figured out a way around it. Just do these large abstract things that can all fit under violent sound in almost every place. The pony governor, all these things. It bails me out.
Right.
You learn your weaknesses and you don't have to overcome them. You step around them.
Yep. For a long time, I would just do a one-word title. I learned that from Andre Cole in his workshop, because he always preferred the understated to the overstated, which I agree with. But I ended up writing a lot of, like, forgettable poems, because I feel like if you can't remember a title, you know what I mean, you've lost your reader somewhat. So it's a struggle.
That sounds good. Well, I appreciate you coming. Obviously, the cookies were good. I'm still going to eat mine.
Oh, I need to eat some.
But we'll be doing these about every month. I know our next guest is going to be Maggie Smith, so I'm excited that she's coming as well, as we keep these awesome female poets from Columbus coming and teaching me how to make food. I have no idea how. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next month for Maggie Smith. Bye. It was a lot of fun. I've sort of just kept baking cookies with the rest of the dough and now have an incredible pile of cookies to eat myself or to give to others. But I want to let everyone know what's going on with SAFTA right now. Right now there's a residency application period that closes on June 30th. So if you want to come on down to Knoxville and do some writing at the farm, that application deadline is the 30th. And right now Sundress Publications is open for full-length poetry manuscript open period. And that goes until July 17th. And that one I think is either 10 or 12 bucks or buy a book. So you can get one of our awesome Sundress books and we'll read your manuscript. I'm on that group. So we'll get to read what you've got, send it on to us, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon. And we'll see you for the next cookbook in July with Maggie Smith.